You know, when you think of folklore, you probably picture something ancient, something from the past. But what if it actually holds a crucial key to our future? Today, we're going to dive into how the stories that define our communities are fighting back against modern threats, and what that means for those of us trying to preserve them.
So, let me start with a little story, an allegory. Imagine a village that's doing great, paved roads, big houses, all the wealth you could ask for. But slowly, over time, the tradition of evening storytelling, the sharing of histories, it just faded away. And as this powerful quote puts it, that village, it could still survive, but it had no idea who it was anymore.
And that right there is the heart of the problem. Without its stories, the village completely lost its identity. Yeah, the people had skills, they had comfort, but they had no compass. They didn't know who they were or why their community even mattered. And that feeling of being unanchored, well, that's something a lot of us can probably recognize in our own communities today. So what's causing it?
To really get what's happening, we have to look at this huge shift in how we communicate. The philosopher Walter Benjamin, he saw this threat coming almost a century ago. And believe me, his ideas are more relevant now than they have ever been.
So here's Benjamin's big idea. For thousands of years, humanity ran on experience. It was passed down through stories, as wisdom, as counsel. But in our modern world, that's been shoved aside by a new force, information. Verifiable, immediate data and news. We've basically traded the deep roots of wisdom for a constant flood of disposable facts. Okay, let's break this down, because this is really the core of it. On one side, you've got storytelling. That's all about wisdom and experience. It's timeless, right? A good story can be told for generations. It creates a real human connection and gives you counsel on, well, how to live. But then you have information. That's a whole different beast. It's just facts and data. It's completely tied to a specific moment. Yesterday's news is basically worthless. It demands verification, and while it might explain the why of something happening, it offers zero guidance on how to make sense of our lives. So this leaves us with a pretty scary question, doesn't it? If Benjamin's right, if this flood of information is really drowning out the stories that anchor us, what does that mean for our future? Are we all just destined to become like that wealthy, lost village? Well, here's the good news. The story doesn't end there.
Because it turns out, folklore isn't just some fragile relic. It's actually an incredibly resilient and dynamic force. It's constantly adapting to the modern world, and in some pretty amazing ways. Yeah, a lot of research shows that folklore is anything but passive. It's not just sitting there waiting to be forgotten. When it's faced with new challenges like globalization or the internet, it evolves. It finds new ways to express a community's identity and keep those traditions alive in brand new forms. So, what does folklore actually do for us today? Well, it serves these vital functions. It fills in the gaps that official histories leave behind. It gives a voice to people who are often left out of the history books. It documents traditions, it keeps generational stories alive, and it captures the changing culture of a place, connecting our local world to the global one. It's basically our living, breathing collective memory. And all of this work builds something that sociologists call social capital. What's that? It's basically the glue that holds a community together. It's the trust, the shared identity, the feeling of cooperation that makes a community strong. And folklore? It's the engine that creates this capital, reminding us of our shared past and giving us a common ground to build a future on. Okay, this brings us to the most important part of our explainer, especially for those of you out there who actually do this work, who safeguard our heritage. If folklore is this powerful, how do we actively protect and preserve it? Well, the key lies in a very specific practice. And that practice is oral history. Now, this isn't just sitting down for a casual chat. It's a formal process. It's about capturing firsthand evidence of the past by recording, documenting, and archiving people's experiences to professional standards, so they become a permanent part of our historical record. And if you're going to do this right, there's a clear roadmap to follow. First, you scope out the project. What's the theme? Why is this needed? Then you plan your resources: time, people, equipment. After that, and this is so important, you handle the ethics. You get consent, you protect your interviewees. And finally, you document and archive everything so that people can actually find it and use it. And listen, that last part, the archiving, it's absolutely key, because preservation is totally pointless if nobody can access it. The goal isn't to lock these stories away in some dusty vault. It's to create a living resource that people can interact with through websites, exhibitions, school programs, art, so the stories can keep doing their important work. And we can't forget the incredible impact this has on the storytellers themselves. This quote just says it all. The very act of sharing their experience helps people make sense of their own lives. It builds a sense of identity and well-being, not just for them, but for the entire community that gets to hear their story. So, we're going to end by turning this whole thing back to you. In your neighborhood, in your family, your community, those stories are there. They're in the memories of your elders and in traditions that might be fading. They are the anchor we all need. So the question is, what story does your community need to tell before it's gone forever?